like to begin with two epigraphs, a quote by Stuart Hall: "The central apparatuses of social control in the state, the police, and the courts." And another quote by Jacques Attali: "This order by noise is not born without crisis." The history of noise is a history of control. Control theory, a concept originally emerging from the fields of engineering and mathematics, now making its way into psychology, sociology, criminology, history of that. It theorizes about the design and maintenance of stable and predictable systems. Audio technologies such as amplifiers were invented to control, manage, and reduce noise at the same time as they amplify a particular signal. This technology informed early theorizing about control. Today, the policing of noise is evidenced in technologies of surveillance, here over the highways in Los Angeles, where I live, crowd control, and soundproofing mechanisms, whether it's to do with policing, imprisonment, or detention globally. The control of noise, in many ways, is the control of society. Theorist Stuart Bennett wrote in The History of Control Engineering that the goal of amplifiers specifically is to increase the power of a signal while reducing the, quote, noise and disturbance in the system. This is a diagram of noise cancellation headphones, where you wouldn't imagine an amplifier is required, but indeed it helps provide the anti-noise that combats the noise signal, thus deadening or evening it, canceling noise source. So the amplifier plays selective amplification. Another control theorist, James R. Lee, observed, "To achieve successful control, we must have a defined objective and be able to predict adequately over some sufficient time scale all the outcomes and all the actions that are open to us." So system control is a concern of audio engineers as well as police. It is within this control intersection that my work on sound and policing resides. I seek to apply Stuart Hall's assessment of, quote-unquote, the police as amplifiers, from where the title of my talk is taken, to analyze and listen to the role of police in increasing while controlling disturbances in social, political, and economic systems. So one way to access an understanding of the police as amplifiers is to listen to the police. So through the studying of the sounds of policing. In this case, I listen to police dispatches.
Bravo 91 to command post.
Sound is a crucial missing link in contemporary studies of policing, particularly given the silence and inaccessibility surrounding internal police communications. This is not the matrix, it's actually the nervous system for police dispatching in Los Angeles, of the Los Angeles Police Department. There are not public tours or sound walks available for this space. But maybe I shall take you on with that. Making these sounds public does much to offer transparency and accountability in regards to criminal justice agencies really around the world. Taking the notion of the police as amplifiers literally here, I'm interested in applying the technology and theory of amplification as a way to think through how power works in and around policing and practices of criminal justice. Indeed, amplification technology is about literal power, energy, and the focusing of power toward a particular end. Stuart Hall, among other editors, writes in the book Policing the Crisis in 1978. This was a study of mugging in the UK. And it argued that policing both defines and amplifies particular behaviors as quote-unquote crimes with their overt attention to particular activities. Hall noted that over-policing of particular behaviors can actually provoke a criminal response from the public, thus producing a self-fulfilling prophecy that confirms police suspicions of criminal activity among particular groups. So in effect, the police are identifying and creating the criminal activity by their nature of policing. Here are a few sonic examples from police department dispatches from Los Angeles.
Hispanic takes our blonde hair and team overheard discussing a 9mm weapon, holding the weapon was seen into the sun instead of 410. Male of the description knocked on the door, yelling for the door to be open. Not down to the PR of the residence. And the Harrison Spears, petition number 5, charging 932. 12229 Ventura Boulevard, is public garage, suspect 3 male black, 2 male black, 390. No further description, gain entry to the public parking garage. Carried by the unknown number of vehicles that are inside the location. Chandler, like small suspect. 06 Charles, wrong suspect, read him first.
Just for update on the block.
So I'm going to echo some of the things we hear. So I don't know if you picked up the words here, but wrong suspect, no weapon was found, and a repeated identification of criminal suspects by their race, by racial identifiers. Perhaps helpful for a police profile, whether it's claimed or not, this recreates and reifies relationships and links between communities of color and crime, even though no weapon was found, or even though wrong suspect. As a parallel that I'm tempted to make, we move to the space of social protest. As a participant in the Occupy movement in 2011, myself, and having observed forms of organized social protest that had been heavily policed, I'm interested in Paul's assessment of the police as amplifiers and the connection between mass protest and mass policing, and how this may link to local manifestations of everyday policing.
Both sides, roughly about 30 people have linked arms. They've also had masks to their faces, or using the PA to give announcements. We can't make out what they're saying.
A snippet here that I'm going to spend more time with of the policing of an Occupy encampment. My question here is, how might the sound of protest, policing, help one to understand the nature of the global crises being managed, or perhaps even produced, by the policing itself? This research, listening to police dispatches of Occupy protests, links practices of everyday local policing, as we heard with, in Los Angeles, to ideas of mass global policing. The worldwide Occupy movement, here's a mapping of at least 700 some protests in over 80 countries, is a case in point. The worldwide movement had a corresponding global police response, and it offers insights into dynamics of not only criminal justice, but global capitalism. Indeed, the expansion and growth of global capital is often closely related to increased policing, increased protest, and increased incarceration. The heavy-handed policing of the Occupy movement, which I'll play some sound clips for you, is a case in point. Particular to this presentation is one large Occupy encampment at City Hall in Oakland, California, my home state and in the United States in 2011, and is my example for today to offer a window to some of these contemporary realities and possible futures of either mass protest and or mass policing. The rarity of these kinds of recordings being made public speaks to the importance of studying sound in general, but these recordings in particular, in the study of global police accountability and transparency. My argument here is that police globally amplified the quote-unquote crisis of Occupy in their very process of policing it by, number one, identifying it as a crisis, and two, mobilizing police personnel and resources in the form of a crisis response. The sounds of this can be heard through the amplifier of the police dispatch in the lead-up to the physical eviction of Occupy Oakland protesters. So this was the, not a campground, but a nonviolent protest in front of City Hall in Oakland, and proceeded with the early morning of October 25th, 2011, with these announcements.
Unlawful assembly is being read now. They have 5 minutes from now. Yes, unlawful assembly is being read right now.
The classification of Occupy Oakland's assembly as, quote, unlawful, and setting a timetable of, quote, 5 minutes until the eviction, allowed the Oakland Police Department to implement an immediate system of control in regards to the Occupy encampment.
All right, Alice and the company commanders, we've given them the arrest announcement. Nobody's leaving. We've given them the lawful assembly 5 minutes to start making their way out. Nobody's leaving. Let's start crushing in the lines, moving in.
The police then proceeded to amplify their own response through bullhorns, mobilization, arrests, and barricades of Oakland City Hall Park.
Slowly form lines around the plaza. Slowly move forward. Yeah, everybody's subject to arrest. They were given the 647 meeting announcement as well as the unlawful assembly announcement. They did not leave. And you want to tighten up on Broadway. You want to cover the walkway?
Now, absent from the justifications of the eviction of Occupy by the Oakland police were the political aspects of the protest and larger Occupy movement. Occupy's questioning of city and police authority and resources, their critique of wealth inequality, this was set aside by local police concerns over, quote, fire hazards, sanitation, food storage, unsafe structures, and notably, noise. This framing and approach to the police of Occupy Oakland was replicated in the evictions of other Occupy encampments globally in the following weeks. Minor legal infractions, fire hazards, sanitation, noise were suddenly immediate and top city concerns, justifying the mobilization of entire police forces as a response, and in the case of Occupy Oakland, police forces from several surrounding cities assisted in the eviction. The police focus on property as a proxy for people supported, ironically, the Occupy movement critique of systems of government and U.S. institutions that prioritize property over people. This can be heard on the dispatch.
The city center, the walkway to the city center security.
And we also got the walkway between City Hall and 250 that's open.
Right, it should be, for what it's worth, the alley between City Hall and 250 is unchecked. Oh, you gotta get a team over that alley over to City Hall.
So the repeated sonic references in the dispatches to City Hall, surrounding, retaking, barricading it, are not without symbolic meaning in the context of, quote, occupation. Here is the sonic manifestation of the state privatizing what was formerly public space, public government, public resources, parks, city government. These are the sounds of reoccupation, recolonization, in the form of sirens, static, and marching orders from a local police department. Heard on one portion of the dispatch that chronicled the minutes before and after the eviction of Occupy Oakland, one voice periodically gives updates about the protesters.
Okay, for the record, on the approach of officers, the crowd simply started chanting, "Manic." For the record, we're seeing more shields come out with the crowd. Yeah, right, it should be for the record, these guys are just trying to make plans to do something. They're making no effort to leave the area. Something else, you?
For the record is the introductory phrase given each time the state anticipates resistance from the protesters. This phrasing suggests a hyper-consciousness by the speaker that the police dispatch may exist as an archival document of the events unfolding. This report is, quote-unquote, for the record, unquote. The phrasing is explicit and precise in its delivery and stands out from the variety of other police chatter coordinating the eviction. This is the embodied voice of the surveillance state, one that is intentional and aware of the power of the record, of reporting. The majority of the voices in the dispatch, however, are the rank-and-file officers and captains. Like the protesters, they are noisy, questioning, challenging order.
Charlie Company get involved in that too. Hey, firm, we need you to form up a skirmish line to block the plaza. All right, Allison or Rochelle, are you guys moving forward? Hold on, we still got folks asking up. Hold on. Captain, how far you guys want us to come? We're already at the top, about the tent. You need to move in. You need to pay attention. We need to move you guys as a coordinated effort. Hey, Captain, you want us to start making an arrest of these people? Yeah, everybody's subject to arrest.
This is the sound of the state in crisis, where constant authority is required to maintain and order even the agents of the state. What is notable here is that this is business as usual on the dispatch recordings, revealing the disorder of order keeping by the state. Through this system of control, this amplifier, one also hears other noises and disturbances, notably in the form of the Occupy protesters resisting with drums and chants.
Alpha 35 to Madero, so I can use a couple extra people to fortify the sign out here. We got a group.
The words are intelligible, but a rhythm of drum beats and shouts can be heard as a soundtrack to the police convergence on City Hall. At times, the sounds of the protesters are indistinguishable from the dispatch static. It is all noise, and exemplifies the collective sonic and political disturbances in the social control system. Control theorist Stuart Bennett reminds us that the history of systems engineering in the United States is a history of, quote, struggling to get control systems working in the presence of noise. In conclusion, the police dispatch of the eviction of Occupy Oakland chronicles the sound of a control system working to get noise and the people that emit noise, both protesters and officers, under control. This eviction and the police eviction of other Occupy movement encampments globally between 2011 and 2012 reduced the original energy of Occupy, but did not silence it. Indeed, as heard here, the policing of Occupy arguably amplified the movement's signal. The sounds of the Occupy movement and other global protests since have echoed into popular culture, media, and academia, helping to frame global debates over wealth inequality and economic justice. Collectively, these disturbances in the system are ringing reminders of the power and possibility of listening to noise and the challenge of policing the crisis. Thank you.